So there are two key variables that everyone must consider when setting financial targets for themselves. There's income, right? And then there's the capital. Right, so what you want to do is you want to set some targets and what kind of passive income do you want in your life from your investment portfolio? Because right now, the majority of us in this particular webinar is actually trading our time for an income. And in an ideal world, from that income, you're building up a surplus, right? And building up your capital. And ideally, you get a return on investment on your net asset position. So much so that it grows to a certain amount. We'll start working on the goals a little bit in a minute's time, right? Where it spits out an income for you so that you don't have to trade your time for an income anymore. So that's the first, those are the first two variables. So what we want to do is we want to start with the end in mind. So I've taken the liberty of wanting to introduce to you Jack and Jill, right? Jack and Jill is a household, basically. So parents of two kids, essentially, right? And these are their salaries, right? $275 for Jack and $27K for Jill. Basically, the savings of $25,000 per annum, and their asset position is approximately 1 mil, right? They've got their principal place residence worth 1.03, 1.1-ish, right? And they've got their superannuation balance of just shy of $400,000, right? So that's where they're at. And what we want to do with Jack and Jill is set some targets, right, for themselves. So what does that actually mean? So we've got income and capital targets. And as I mentioned earlier, they're both intertwined with one another, right? So how it works is this. What we want to do is we want to set a arrive number for an income target, passive income target, right? So for Jack and Jill, they've decided to aim for, let me just go to my cheat sheet, right? They've decided to go for $300,000, right? So $300,000 as their initial passive income target for their household, right? So how do you start that? So for the people in this particular webinar, what I suggest you do is have a think about how ambitious you want to be in your target setting, right? So the bottom of the range is your yearly expenses, right? Because financial freedom is equivalent to you being able to replace your current income to pay for all of your yearly expenses. So that's the bottom target as far as I'm concerned. The top target is your gross salary, right? So what are you currently, what's the take-home pre-tax? Right? So some people will be on $150,000 expenses, and then let's say $250,000 worth of top line income, right? So you've got to choose between those two numbers as your initial arrive income goal, right? So once you've chosen, what I suggest you do is you draw this table out. And if you're interested in learning more and doing this, because I might be going through a little bit quickly, what I'll do is I'll share a quick link on the chat box right here, right? Where you can go and download the particular workbook that we've created for you guys, basically. So what will happen there is you can download the workbook and you can go through this whole process yourself, right? So for Jack and Jill, they've got $300,000 for their arrive number, initial numbers, goal. So what we want to set for Jack and Jill is a stretch goal, the strive number. What does that mean? For them, they decided for a $400,000 passive income per annum, right? And then the thrive number, which is a big, hairy, audacious goal, which is designed to sort of scare them a little bit, they decided to add another $100,000 on there, right? So these are their targets. Now, sizable targets, right? You may as well go big when you're setting some targets for yourself, because you can start asking more quality questions around how you can solve that particular problem, right? So what we do now is multiply that out by 20, because you can consistently get 5% return on investment on your net asset position to produce the income you need from your capital, right? So multiply that out, we need 6 mil, 8 mil, and then 10 mil. Net asset position invested at 5%. Now, quite huge numbers, right? So what we want to do now is work out, well, how do we get there ASAP without losing sleep? Right? I call this thing the sleep test, right? You want to pass the sleep test with everything that you're doing. So you need to play conservatively to begin with, learn the ropes, make sure you're doing the right strategies that pushes you to get a better outcome, essentially, right? So within the context of the doubling game, they're hovering around that 1 mil mark, right? So they want to get to 6 mil sooner rather than later, right? 8 mil and 10 mil as their targets, right? So what they want to do now is work out, well, how many cycles will it take them to get to 6 mil, 8 mil, and then $10 million, right? the next question is, well, how long will it take to produce their first doubling cycle? Because right now they're sitting right here, right? Enter your net asset growth per annum. There are 3 core metrics that I always go through with individuals and in households on how to calculate the doubling cycle, right? Have the speed of the doubling cycle. It comes down to savings, taxes saved, and the return on investment on their current portfolio. So for Jack and Jill, they've got their house and they've got their super, essentially, right? If they want to ignore super for now, right, what they can do, because let's say they're in their late 30s, they don't necessarily want to consider their super, so they've got their $1.1 million house, right? So we would work out, well, with that in mind, at a 5% return on investment in terms of growth, they're getting 55K per annum, right, on their return on investment, right? What else is going on? So they've got that, they've got their principal place of residence, they've got $25,000 of savings, right? So on a year-to-year basis, they can save $25,000. So what I suggest you do is have a think about what kind of surplus you can have for your particular household and write it down. So what are the 3 core numbers for you? Because what we want to do is we want to add it up and divide it by the net asset position, right? So taxes saved for Jack and Jill, let's have a quick look at the cheat sheet again, 4K basically, right? So 4K. So I prepared this earlier. So we'll go through the exact numbers for Jack and Jill shortly, right? And what we've done is we've looked at their net assets outside of super, right, of 520K, basically, right? So if we add up 25 plus 4 plus 55, 25 plus 4 plus 55, we get to $84,000, right, of net asset growth per annum, right? So have a think about what portfolio you have. So let's say you've got multiple properties in your portfolio, right? And let's say a share portfolio, right? What you do is you work out, well, what kind of growth can those properties get you, right? Ignore cash flows for now, right? Just have a think about what kind of growth. Is it 3%? Is it 4%? Is it 5%? Is it 6 or 7% that you can bank on year over a 15-year period? If you go with 5%, that's reasonably conservative, obviously, right? So run with that and work out, well, what kind of number you can actually produce or your portfolio can produce for you. So we get to, for Jack and Jill, 84K divided by their net asset position at 520, right? So 84 divided by 520 is 16.2%, right? Then we enter the rule of 72. So some of you may have heard of the rule of 72, where instead of a net asset growth, they look at what kind of return on investment you would need to double the initial investment that you put in. So by creating this particular formula here, where you're looking at savings, tax saved, and return on investment, we get to look at how long will it take you to double your net asset position with the new rule of 72, right? For Jack and Jill, it's now at 16.2%. So what we do is we go 72 divided by 16.2 equals 4.4 years, right? So what happens then is we go back to their initial position, i.e. 520K, right, of outside of super money, because they want to focus in on outside of super, right? So we look at this where they're starting at 520. So the next doubling cycle becomes 1.04 mil. Next doubling cycle, 2.08. Next is 4.16. Next is 8.32. And then last one is 16.6 mil. Right? So if we add all that, if we work out the number of years for the initial doubling cycle, we get to 4.4 years, essentially. Right? Now, the hardest part is this. As the doubling cycles progress, it gets harder and harder. It doubles each and every time, right? So it goes from 4.4 to 8.8, right? 17.6, 35.2, right? And 70.4. So this is the scary part. For Jack and Jill, with their current strategy to get to 16 mil, 16.6 mil, it'll take them upwards of 100 years, well and truly above 100 years, right? So what they need to do is reassess what kind of savings they've got. How do you increase the savings? How do you increase your taxes? And how do you increase your return on investment to increase the net asset growth percentage on a year-to-year basis? So that's pretty much the doubling game in a nutshell.